Hello everyone, I'm on the beach in a town called Ryde on the Isle of Wight. I'm now walking underneath a pier, Ryde Pier, and there's pigeons above me, so this could get interesting. I'm here to have a look at the little known 1864 Ryde Pier Tramway. Now the reason it's interesting is because it faced such a logistical nightmare when they built it that it had to be rerouted through someone's living room. Need to stop meeting like this, and then by the fifth time it's just awkward, isn't it? So here I am at the edge of the pier. It's actually 3 piers though, so it's about 3/4 of a mile out there. Now these are called Ryde Sands, and they do go, I mean you can see just through there how far they go out, and they go out even further than that, hence why they needed to build a pier. This is the original one. This was built in 1813 and opened in 1814. This is the second one, which is now a walkway, but this was the tramway, this particular one. This was built in 1864, and this is the railway. This came in 1880. Now the Isle of Wight in the old days was all about fishing and agriculture, and then they realised that actually tourism was a viable option. But the problem with these sands that are behind me is that when tourists would come over on the boats, they would have to jump onto the back of a porter who would wade with them on the back, the bags on the back, carry them to the sand. Then they would have to walk, getting sandy feet, all the way to the shore before they could go and you know, go and find their guest house or whatever. And Victorians didn't really like doing that. And who could blame them, to be honest? Okay, so I'm walking along the original pier at the minute. It's the road now. This one is the tram pier. This one is the one that came in 1864, and then, like I said before, that's the railway. Now at the end of the pier, I won't walk all the way to the end, but if you look at how it looks now, back in the day it was incredible. You had a theatre at the end, a massive girt theatre, you had a signal box, you had a sailing club and all that kind of stuff. That's all gone now, unfortunately. But if you look at some old photos and some old footage which I've managed to find, you can just see just how amazing it was back in the day. And this here was the tram stop just there. So I've come away from the pier because it's really, really windy, and I know that's just going to get annoying. So during railway mania, the Isle of Wight was no different, to be honest. Down the east coast of the island, you've got places like Sandown and Shanklin and Ventnor, which are holiday resorts. Now they wanted to connect to Ryde, because obviously this is where the tourists are coming over from all over England. So they built a railway from Shanklin originally into Ryde. Now the problem was, obviously they needed to get to this pier, but the locals wouldn't have it. Now between here and Ryde St Johns Road, which is about 2 miles away, that's where the railway ended at that point, there's some really big houses, and there's one particular street called Melville Street, which is where a lot of the rich folks lives, and they didn't want anything to do with these smelly railways, so they kept objecting and objecting and objecting. So what happened was the railway got there in 1864 at St Johns Road, and the tramway got to the bottom of this pier at 1864, but there's a 2 mile gap. Well, obviously that's not going to fly, so they had to build a tramway, and that's what they did. So here's the railway now. What the horse-drawn tramway did is come down the pier, and then it followed basically this line here where my hand is, because this here to the left is actually pretty much where the sea wall was in those days. You see you've got hover travel there, you've got Ryde ice rink there, and you've got the Super Bowl and the pavilion. That's all reclaimed land. That was all the sea originally. So where that very, very bright looking lady is running, that's where the tram line went. So between 1864, when this tram line was put together, and 1880, when the railway eventually was given permission to replace it, there were legal wranglings and arguments that went on for absolutely ages between locals that lived in Melville Street, who had, you know, plenty of money and clout and didn't want a railway near them, and then the people that owned the guest houses and the hotels in Sandown and Shanklin that really wanted this railway to connect because they wanted obviously to tap into the tourist industry. And then also you had mainland railway companies trying to sort it as well, because obviously they're losing revenue as well. So you had the London, Brighton and South Coast Railway, and you also had the London and South Eastern Railway trying to sort it out. They were putting money in and trying to get beyond these objections, and they just couldn't do it. It went on, and in the end they found that there was a guy called Captain Hewish who used to work for the London South Western Railway. Now he was an horrible so-and-so apparently, and a vicious negotiator, and he'd retired, but he'd retired to Ventnor, which is on the south coast of the Isle of Wight. So they hired him to try and negotiate with the people of Melville Street, and even he couldn't do it. So there you go. Now the railway came in 1880, and that says 1881. So that's thrown me somewhat, I've got to say. But that's Ryde Tunnel, and that goes off under there, under the castle in the distance, which we'll talk about in a second. Now if I just come round here, I'd have been stood on the beach at this point, and there was another pier here called Victoria Pier, which was a lot shorter than Ryde Pier, that basically went out, I guess, basically through the ice rink there, the now defunct and closed down ice rink. That pier, the Victoria Pier, was built as a rival to Ryde Pier, but they didn't build it long enough, so actually it could only take boats at certain tides and certain times of the year, which, you know, isn't ideal. So that then became the swimming baths, where people would go up to the end and jump in the sea so no one could see them in their, you know, in their swimming cozies and whatever. But that only lasted up until about the First World War, and then it was gone and disappeared. So as I say, sorry about the wind, the tram line came along here. There was a little spur that went off to about here, which was where that pier was. Obviously, like I say, none of this was here until 1880. And then it carried on down, and we'll follow the route of it down there. Now what the railway that's there now does is goes underneath that building. When they reclaimed all of this land here, they built this in 1926. That's Ryde Pavilion. It's a bowling alley attached to it now. When I was a kid, they tried to knock that down for no reason. They just knock it down and then build a bowling alley on top of it. But why not save it and build it on the back of it, which is what they did in the end, but not before I'd chained myself to a bulldozer, and my sister had actually slept overnight for about 3 nights in a sleeping bag on top of that pavilion. And we saved it along with lots of other people, and it's still here now, which is quite an incredible achievement. Okay, so I'm walking along. This is basically the tram line. That's the sea, believe it or not. And then this here is Ryde Castle. Now what the railway that's there now does is it goes underneath. Now you can just see the camber of the road goes under there. So this here, the original bit in the middle, that was built in 1831. And then they built the tunnel, went underneath it, and then since then obviously they've extended it. The tunnel that went underneath that, or still goes underneath that, was something that's called a cut and cover. And what that means for people that aren't necessarily into railways is instead of boring a tunnel underground, you basically dig out a big cutting and then you know, load over the top, basically put a lid on it essentially. Now some guy in the 80s, I kind of want to say he was an American, but I might be misremembering, but some guy anyway in the 80s bought Ryde Castle. Now bearing in mind, only half of it was built in 1831. The rest came in the 20s over stages. He presented that Henry VIII had stayed there, right? And obviously that can't be true because it was built in 1831. But it's built in such a way when you look at it that it looks a lot older than it is. So he fooled quite a lot of people and used it as an attraction for people to go and visit. You know, I want to eat in the same restaurant as Henry VIII. I want to stay in the same hotel as Henry VIII. And then it was pointed out to him by a very obnoxious child that actually the tunnel that goes underneath half of that was a cut and cover tunnel, so therefore that can't be true. And that very obnoxious kid might have been me. So here we go, we're hugging what was the sea wall basically. Now you might have noticed, obviously I've pointed at where the railway's gone under the castle. It's disappeared over in that direction, yet we're hugging the beach. Now where we want to go, Ryde St Johns Road, is in that direction, so this is less than ideal. Down there you get to Melville Street, that's where the rich people were. And like I say, they didn't want those smelly trains coming near their houses. So as I mentioned earlier, Captain Hewish got involved, and what he tried to do to negotiate with them and win them over was say, okay, I tell you what, we won't come through your area with this railway. What we'll do is we'll build you a station. You get your very own station. We'll come from Ryde St Johns Road, we'll come in about another mile, and we'll build you a station of your own where you can, you know, jump on the train whenever you want and go off on your fancy holidays. But that wasn't good enough either. So Captain Mark Hewish, who was this big guy that was going to break down the negotiation and win it, failed, unfortunately. Hey, mate. So here we go. Coming up almost to the point where the tramway turns right. Okay, so the tram line's come to about here, and what it was meant to do was come across the road and go down Cornwall Street there, then follow that exact line past that van all the way down to join what is now the railway. At that point it followed the same line, but there's a problem. Underneath this road, I hope a car doesn't come along now, there's actually a river. It's called Monkton Mead, and it goes right under here, and you can probably see the slight camber of the road. That's because there's a culvert going under here. So when they went to build the tram line, you can't build on that. So you see this house here, now it's someone's living room, so I don't want to film it too much, but this bay window, that's where the line went through. Now I remember seeing photos of this house with the arch when I was a kid, and I remember thinking, you know, that's crazy. But that's what they had to do. They couldn't build the tram line across here because it would collapse, the way it would go bang. So I'll come past now because I can put a photo up where you can see that side, and then I'll come to the other end. This is a bit of a wind tunnel here. I am sorry, I keep apologising, but the wind is annoying. It's an Isle of Wight thing. So there you go. Now if I put one of the old photos up, you can see that bay window, that was taken out, and the tram line went through someone's lounge, and it went all the way down through there to join up with what is now the railway. Now once you get beyond that point, it becomes a private close of private houses and stuff, and then that goes and joins up with the railway. So I've sent the drone up so you can see that, but obviously I don't want to walk through there, it's someone's private land. So I'm going to walk back along the beach, and what I'll do is I'll just quickly turn you around so you can see this in the distance. So these are Ryde Sands, like I was mentioning earlier, how far they go out, and they do go out even further than that. But in the distance you can just make out that white tower in Portsmouth. That's the Spinnaker Tower. Now that was one of the last things that was built at Butterley Works, just on the edge of Ripley. And if you've seen any of the previous videos that me and Phil have done in the area, obviously we went around Butterley Works. That was one of the last things they built for the millennium. And in true English style, it was delivered about 3 years late, I think. And the lifts didn't work, because, you know, there you go. Just to close up, obviously Ryde Pier got its railway in the end in 1880, or if you believe the tunnel, 1881. And how that was done was the London Brighton South Coast Railway and the London and South Eastern Railway, which were great rivals, by the way. They actually joined forces for, I think, the only time they ever joined forces, and they funded that tunnel to go underneath the posh people's houses so they didn't have to smell the smoke and see those dirty steam trains and stuff. And it got its railway, because what was happening in the end was these horse-drawn trams were just overrun, because, I mean, Queen Victoria made the Isle of Wight incredibly famous. She made it her home at Osborne House, and so everyone wanted to come here. The rich and, you know, well-to-do wanted to be here on holiday, and so there was just too many people for a horse-drawn tramway. So there was more pressure, more and more pressure to get that railway finished and get it up to the end of the pier. And like I say, that's what they did with these two mainland railway companies funding it, which might sound weird. Why would you fund a railway on the Isle of Wight when you don't run railways on the Isle of Wight? But obviously it served their interest to get people over here, to get tourists over here, because it's them that's going to be bringing them to Portsmouth to get on the boat. Do you know what I mean? And it just became incredible. Like I said earlier, the footage you see of those people coming up and down those piers, the amount of boats that were coming back and forth, tourist trains, one after the other, one after the other. It's all changed now, obviously. But there you go, that's the little known Ryde Pier Tramway. which lasted from 1864 until 1880 because the railway, of course, replaced it. But still, quite a quirky story going through someone's house. I don't know how I'd feel about someone knocking on the door and saying, is it all right if I put a tram through your house? But there you go. Anyway, thanks for watching. Apologise for the wind. As always, I'll see you next time.